What if Arya Stark had Jaqen H'ghar kill Tywin Lannister, the finale? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. Arya blinks as she shifts uncontrollably in the small council chambers. Roose Bolton has her serving them wine to hear what is happening.
My lord, since your victory in King's Landing, the realm has been beset by problems. First, there were these Sparrows that you have dealt with after they tried to overthrow the High Septon. But beyond that was the Ironborn, who continued to raid the western coast.
Aye, and thanks to your spy network we managed to turn them against each other, and this place to our own claimant of the throne. Even better is that we found Sansa Stark hiding in the Vale.
Not hiding. Kidnapped, Your Grace. I spoke with her and she claimed she was spirited there by Lord Baelish. With her, Robb Stark now has a stronger line of succession and feels more comfortable helping us with our next challenge.
And what is that?
Ships, my lord. My spies in Essos report that a fleet of ships has departed Marine. It appears that they are lost Iron Fleet.
Are the Greyjoys attempting to recruit slave soldiers now? Are they truly that desperate?
It is not a few unsullied which you should fear, but dragons. I've seen them in the flames. When I search for Marine, they burn brighter than I've ever seen.
They could be defeated once. I shall defeat them again.
Begging your pardon, Your Grace, but dragons aren't the only thing you should worry about. I've studied the prophecies of this continent as well, and they speak of destruction of fire, but also ice. The Wall. You've heard what Robb Stark claimed.
White Walkers, just as the madness of the realm could not get any worse. Very well. You are my master of whispers. Learn of this threat and everything that can be done about it.
As the small council adjourns for the day, Roose takes Arya by the shoulder and leads her out, whispering to her that this is where all her training is to be put to the test. Those were small conflicts, but this is a war that threatens to dwarf the War of the Five Kings. Roose keeps a close watch on the passage of the fleet through Essos, allowing Stannis to organize a counter-response. The sun blazes over the narrow sea as Stannis Baratheon's fleet advances towards where the Iron Fleet is expected to make their arrival. Now Stannis arrays our fleet in a loose semicircle, just as the first longships appear on the horizon. Stannis stands atop the prow of his ship and signals for his fleet to prepare themselves. Behind him, the banners of the fiery heart of R'hllor flutter in the wind as the squadron commanders get into position. Rather than ramming them, Stannis keeps his ships back and begins to rain crossbow and ballista bolts down on them. The semicircle formation creates a killing field. Though the Ironborn try to counter with their counter-barrage, they are hopeless to this attack, as the galleys are taller, thus giving them a better firing position. Stannis orders that they avoid getting too close to ram or board. Though the Ironborn are better sailors and effective warriors, the longships are heavily laden with soldiers and supplies, destroying their maneuverability. But it also makes them dangerous as they get close. Flaming arrows arc through the sky, igniting sails and sending Ironborn screaming into the sea. The initial success bolsters the morale of Stannis' men, and it seems like they can end this invasion before it begins. But as victory appears within grasp, the sky darkens, and a deafening roar of dragons splits the air. Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion descend upon the fleet, their massive wings scattering the galleys like leaves in a storm. Flames engulf the ships, turning the sea into a boiling inferno. With Stannis' fleet scattered, it limits the destruction, but it also makes it easy to create a gap. His left and right squadrons manage to retreat in good order, but the center goes up in flames, allowing the Ironborn to pass through the massive gap. The battle is lost. The remnants of Stannis' fleet retreat, battered and broken. Word of the defeat spreads swiftly across Westeros. House Tyrell senses the power shift. This is the first major defeat Stannis suffers, and as they establish themselves in the Stepstones to prepare for the invasion, the Tyrell send word of an alliance with Daenerys for her invasion, promising her soldiers, especially cavalry, to supplement her army. At the same time, they offer to let her land using Old Town and raise the Reach in rebellion. In the meantime, Roose continues to study the prophecies of this coming war alongside Melisandre. There they begin to learn of the weakness of the White Walkers to dragonglass, while Melisandre urges Stannis to sacrifice one of the king's blood to the Lord of Light to summon the dragons of Dragonstone. One thing becomes clear though, that the castle must be held at all cost. Stannis orders dragonglass to be mined, while he summons Robb Stark to aid him. With this promise, the war begins in earnest as Daenerys Targaryen's forces make a bold move, landing in the Reach with the support of House Tyrell. Mace Tyrell, leveraging his extensive network and influences, rallies the Reach against House Florent. Rebellions begin to form Houses Peake, Tarly, Rowan, and Redwyne, fracturing Stannis' support base. The Reach's fertile land and formidable armies now bolster Daenerys' campaign. More importantly, they provide Daenerys with heavy cavalry that bolsters her already formidable army of Unsullied and freedmen. The Reach soon falls before her, leaving the Florents clinging onto a few enclaves. The Dornish launch a limited counter-strike, managing to strike at a few marcher houses, but lack the strength to truly challenge them. These armies now march north to the weakened Westerlands. The Ironborn, under Victarion Greyjoy, seize the opportunity to invade from the north, swiftly conquering the Iron Islands from Asha Greyjoy. Though she might have been made queen, Victarion's name still flies higher to the men of the Ironborn, and they rally to his side. Soon, they raid the western coasts, seizing coastal castles and leaving the entire west under threat. The coordinated assaults stretch Stannis' forces thin, forcing him into a precarious position. With his fleet bloodied, and with Lannister, Iron, and Redwyne fleets under their control, Stannis cannot risk a naval strike, and instead calls on Robb Stark to join him as he gathers a host of Dornishmen, Stormlanders, and Crownlanders to try and retake the Reach. The Dornishmen's small offensive suddenly gets a massive boost as Stannis arrives, allowing them to challenge the Reach forces properly. Though the Unsullied are feared, Stannis takes advantage of their weaknesses, clearing out their cavalry support and raining arrows on them which they cannot counter. This works in several battles, resulting in serious casualties. It is just in time, too, as Robb arrives south with an army and begins rallying the Valemen and Rivermen. He aims to strike south to Fairmarket and join with Stannis. Together they will have a force that can reconquer the Reach. However, Daenerys' dragons become the great equalizer. They fly from the Westerlands to the Reach, preventing them from consolidating their forces. The dragons launch a fiery assault and a series of attacks that scatter Robb's army and force him to retreat. During the most brutal of these battles near Cider Hall, Robb tries to rally his men in a counterattack, urging his archers to open fire, but is thrown from his horse and tumbles to the ground, barely able to escape and gravely injured. Yet Daenerys does not let them off so easily. She recalls that Robb is the son of Ned Stark and pursues his army relentlessly as they are driven back to the Riverlands and then further east. Meanwhile, Victarion takes another force to strike at the north once more, hitting them while their warriors are down. Daenerys follows close at their heels, chasing them all the way to the Crownlands. The news of Robb's injury reaches King's Landing, sending ripples of fear and uncertainty through the city. In the Red Keep, Melisandre seeks an audience with Roose Bolton and Arya Stark. With her ominous, fiery gaze, she reveals a dark and desperate solution. She can awaken dragons of their own using the king's blood. Roose remains silent for a long moment, pondering the implications of this as he offers a possible solution.
King's blood, you say? I may have a solution to our crisis. A broken king, and one likely not to be missed. During the War of the Five Kings, Balon Greyjoy called himself King of the Isles. That makes his son a claimant to his throne.
Theon? You would burn Theon?
I would burn a traitor, Arya. One who murdered your brothers, who betrayed your family's trust. In truth, Stannis and Robb may thank us for it.
If you think that, then you don't know Robb at all.
Oh, I do. And if I told him this plan, he would think me a monster. He would look for another way, and the North would bleed for it.
And he will find a way. He's done so every time.
Robb is but a boy, and even his luck must run out. All the boldness in the world cannot save him from Dragonfire. It didn't in Cinder Hall, and it will not again, unless he is prepared to sacrifice his entire army for victory. But would you trade 10,000 lives for honor? So you can sleep at night, telling yourself you are an honorable fool? Or will you let those 10,000 return home to their families, while being their knife in the dark? Theon is broken in mind, body, and spirit. Perhaps this will be kinder.
King's blood. Perhaps the Lord of Light will approve of this sacrifice.
Steeling herself, Arya approaches Theon. Although Roose offers to make the arrangements himself, she insists on taking care of it for him. She finds Theon just the way she remembered, broken, scared, and weak. He squirms away from the sight of her, but Arya pulls him close.
You won't have to suffer any longer. You've made your mistakes, but now is the time to make it right.
She offers him a drinking skin containing his favorite wine. His eyes widen and he drinks deeply as he's unchained and brought to Dragonstone. Stannis leaves his army to go with them to witness the ritual. But with his fleet decimated, Dragonstone remains largely vulnerable, and Daenerys decides to take a gamble by taking a flotilla to attack it and use it as a staging ground to attack King's Landing. As the ritual begins, she watches the flames start to grow around Theon. The prisoner screams and thrashes wildly, his body struggling against the chains while he howls for mercy. But just as they begin to touch him, he begins frothing at the mouth and slumps over, dead before he can feel any more pain. Arya empties her wineskin and tosses it into the sea. The poison she placed inside ensures he dies swiftly and without prolonged suffering. The sacrifice proves sufficient. The great stone dragon beneath Dragonstone stirs its ancient form, awakening and coming to life. Claws and wings made from stone begin to crack as they move, shaking the rubble off as its eyes, previously dull gray, now flicker with new life, glowing fiery red. As it climbs down from its pedestal, it unleashes an unearthly roar. With this newfound power, Stannis claims the beast as his own, and just in time, too, as he receives word of Daenerys' march towards King's Landing. At the same time, portions of the Red Wine fleet sail to Dragonstone, intent on capturing it while it is unguarded and to help blockade King's Landing. The once dominant dragons of Daenerys now face a formidable adversary. The stone dragon's sheer size and unnatural resilience make it a terrifying opponent. With Stannis on its back, it descends upon the fleet. But to their surprise, they find the great stone dragon, named Proudwing by Stannis, descending from above. As it opens its mouth and a great column of fire spills out, burning the fleet to ash, or forcing them to scatter. As this attack is recalled, he turns his attention to Daenerys, where her army continues its pursuit of Robb Stark's forces. But the sight of Proudwing finally gives them pause. The battle that follows unfolds with unprecedented intensity. Daenerys' dragons, though experienced and numerous, swarm the massive Proudwing, unleashing torrents of fire and raking their claws against its body, chipping at the stone upon it. But though inexperienced, Stannis meets them with a force of will that is terrifying. He fights them off throughout the night as Robb and his soldiers battle the Reach soldiers below. Then, at last, Stannis scores a lucky blow, as Viserion flies close, slashing his claws against his stomach. Proudwing bites down on Viserion, and while the wound is not fatal, it sends him stumbling to the ground. Seeing this, Daenerys flies down after him, while her army is beaten back. As she disappears to where Viserion crashes, the Brotherhood Without Banners reports her location, and Melisandre sends forth shadowy assassins conjured from her dark magic to finish her off. However, Drogon, sensing the unnatural presence, intercepts and destroys the shadow with his fiery breath. But as Daenerys tends to Viserion's wounds, and the other dragons are out hunting, the white beast sniffs the air and growls, pointing its head towards the woods, where a figure emerges. He prepares to unleash a burst of fire, but Daenerys stops him as the shape becomes clear and reveals a young girl.
I saw the dragon. I've never seen one up close before.
She kneels and slowly unwraps the bundle, revealing strips of cured meat.
I brought something for him.
Thank you. You're very brave coming here, you know that? Most people would be afraid.
People have to be brave this time, to protect their homes. If not, someone might take them from you.
Daenerys, intrigued by the girl's boldness, nods slightly. The girl edges closer, offering the meat to Viserion. The dragon sniffs the offering suspiciously, but hunger and fatigue dull his senses. After a few moments, he eats the strips, his eyes fluttering half shut.
Is that why you're here?
Yes, in a way. I came to reclaim my home and my throne. It was taken from me long ago.
By this king?
The one before. He's dead now.
Then why do you still fight for the throne?
Because it's mine. I've been all over the world and seen injustice and abuse from those in power. If a child is set upon by a pack of hounds, it doesn't matter which one tears out its throat. All the dogs are just as guilty.
The girl springs up, drawing a small, sharp knife from her belt and plunges it into her side. The sharp sting of betrayal flashes across her face.
I'm sorry, but I cannot let your family hurt another Stark. The North remembers.
Viserion rumbles weakly, but struggles to raise his head. Her escape is aided by the poisoned meat that keeps Viserion subdued. The white beast, sensing something wrong too late, roars into the night, but Arya is already gone. With this victory, Daenerys' war effort collapses. The dragons are thrown into a fury and cannot be tamed by anyone. The area where they had nested is blocked off by everyone, leaving the rest of the Targaryen army unable to control them, removing them from the fight. Stannis is quick to take advantage of this opportunity and begins mopping up the remnants of her army. This frees up Roose Bolton and Arya to return north, accompanying the first shipments of dragonglass from Dragonstone. But as they travel there, Roose begins to learn more reports about the Night's Watch. The White Walkers' armies continue to grow, their presence being spotted across the haunted forest from the Bay of Seals. Wildlings who journey there bring stories of being attacked along the way, but never in force. However, the largest concentration is in Hardhome, where a large group of wildlings are waiting for salvation. That is where he believes the White Walkers will be. Mance urges them to be proactive and confront the White Walkers there, rather than let them strike out south of the Wall. Stannis agrees and begins organizing an expedition, and soon after, a chilly wind howls over the icy waters as the fleet approaches the desolate shores of Hardhome. Stannis' ships include many defeated sailors from the Ironborn and Redwine fleet, serving in this desolate environment as punishment. These ships carry soldiers, provisions, and most importantly, Proudwing, secured beneath the largest galley. Just as whites can be carried through the wall, they do the same with the stone dragon. The air was thick with tension, and the tales of White Walkers' growing strength is the talk of their journey there. As the fleet anchors there, they are greeted by the sight of hundreds of sunken-eyed and desperate-looking wildlings, surrounded by a collection of hastily created huts. Their bonfires flicker weakly against the encroaching darkness of the haunted forest beyond. Jon Snow stands at the helm of one ship, as he and Stannis begin negotiations. Rather than join them, though, Roose prepares a dinghy and gestures for Arya to come.
Come. Our purpose here is not to ferry wildlings to safety.
Arya's brow furrows, but she climbs aboard and they land just a short distance out of town. Together, the two move through the snow-laden woods, away from the chaos unfolding in Hardhome, where she spots a handful of men preparing themselves for battle. But soon enough, these negotiations take a dramatic shift, as the sound of fighting rings out. At first, Arya thinks that the wildlings must have attacked them, but the sight that greets her chills her to the bone, as she sees frozen shapes streaking through the darkness, commanding hordes of shambling corpses. In the distance, she spots Stannis mounting his dragon and columns of fire igniting from the sky. She opens her mouth, but Roose Bolton simply stares and guides her away.
Don't look back. It will make this easier.
You planned this.
Of course. A feast of souls was the bait. The White Walkers won't ignore such a prize.
How could you do this to all these people? To let them die meaningless deaths?
If you were your brother, I would say die for honor. But they were dying for victory, Arya. The soldier's job is to fight for the people there, but ours is different. To slay the White Walker commanders.
It's suicide. If those people die, then the White Walker's army only grows.
Not quite. I have studied these creatures carefully, and learned that if we slay the White Walkers, the Whites will fall. Men, women, children, soldiers, small folk, or noble. It does not matter how many people they kill, or how many die, so long as the White Walkers live, we shall all be on the stranger's door. But so long as we kill their leaders, then we have won. That is what it means to be a knife in the dark, Arya. To find the chink in the armor, and break them.
They ascend a ridge overlooking the battlefield. They glimpse the battle below, where the undead surge against the desperate defenses of the wildlings in Westerosi. Even with the dragonfire and wildfire, the whites remain relentless. Roose doesn't slow down, and continues to crest the hill where the Night King stands. His form was tall and regal, clad in armor that shimmered like ice under the moon. His piercing blue eyes survey the carnage below with detached indifference. Around him, other White Walkers stand like silent sentinels, their breath misting in the frigid air. Roose draws his dragonglass sword and readies himself. Arya readies her dagger as they creep closer. The Night King remains stiff, unaware of the danger inching towards him. Suddenly, his head snaps towards them, and he lets out a sound like the sound of crackling ice as his White Walkers draw their weapons. Roose smiles.
I have long dreamed of this day. For lifetimes beyond memory, my kin has dabbled in the vilest practices to understand what is and is not possible. To know what can be achieved, and now I have seen it. Whatever else, I can die, fulfilled by knowing I have seen it with my own eyes.
The White Walkers begin to advance upon him. From the trees behind them, sudden movement erupts. Figures charge forward, their blades glinting in the moonlight. Lord Beric Dondarrion, his flaming sword blazing in the darkness, rushes into the fray. Thoros of Myr at his side. A handful of Brotherhood without banners follows, their ragged cloaks billowing as they descend upon the White Walkers with dragonglass. The battlefield is chaos. The clash of blades against ice rings out. Fire meets frost, and for a brief moment, the unnatural cold is driving back the heat of battle. Thoros of Myr swings his flaming sword in wide arcs, while Beric chants prayers to the Lord of Light and joins Arya and Roose. A gap opens up for Arya, Roose, and Beric to slip through and rush the Night King directly. He does not move. Roose lunges first, his dragonglass sword slicing through the air, but seemingly out of nowhere, the creature's ice sword bats it aside. Roose feels a sudden chill across his body, but it disappears in an instant as Beric's fiery blade joins in, providing much-needed heat. Arya watches, waiting for an opening, and makes sure no whites slip through. Roose fights with calculated precision, but the Night King is faster and stronger. The others are still engaged with the White Walkers. Even Beric's sword is of little help. The two try to attack from opposite sides, but the Night King's movements are impossibly fast. Suddenly, his blade pierces through Roose's chest, impaling him in one brutal motion. The Lord of the Dreadfort lets out a choked gasp, his body shuddering as frost spreads from the wound. Arya's breath catches in her throat as she watches Roose's pale eyes flicker toward her. The Night King wrenches his blade free, letting Roose's body collapse into the snow. Beric roars and tries to slash at him from behind, but the Night King is faster and parries his overhead strike. Rather than break, the fire and ice of the weapons seem to war each other, locking them in place. Arya does not scream. She does not hesitate. She moves. Her feet barely touch the ground as she sprints toward the Night King, her dagger glinting in her grip. He turns to face her, raising his blade, but Beric grabs him and holds him back until he joins Roose and feels his blade being run through his chest. As the Night King whispers into his ear, making a sound like cracking ice, Beric then pushes the blade deeper. The frost around his body continues to grow.
I've felt this before. The cold doesn't bother me.
Then he grabs the Night King by the neck and holds him firm, making it impossible for him to twist away or pull his sword out. Arya appears behind him. She remembers Roose's words, his training, the North's knife in the dark, the killer unseen. She pivots, driving the Valyrian steel dagger into his side, just below his ribs. For a moment, nothing happens. The world stands still. Then, the Night King shudders. A deep crack spreads across his form. His piercing blue eyes widen, and a soundless breath escapes his lips. He stares down at Arya, as if only now realizing what has happened. The cracks spread, ice breaking apart, light seeping from within. And then, he shatters. The other White Walkers freeze mid-battle, their bodies fractured, their icy weapons falling from their hands before they crumble into nothingness. The Whites let out ear-piercing shrieks as their connection to their master is severed, collapsing lifelessly to the ground. The battle is over. Arya exhales, her breath shaking. She looks down at the place where the Night King once stood. Nothing remains of him but the whispering wind and the fading echoes of the dead. But then she runs to Roose's body, as Thoros rushes to Beric, preparing to revive him once more. But to his shock, the Lightning Lord does not rise.
He has served his purpose. Do not dishonor him by bringing him back again. Otherwise, we are no better than these creatures. I need you to serve the living now. What is it, my lord? Stand witness. Let it be known that I, Roose Bolton, hereby name Arya Stark as Lady of the Dreadfort. In exchange, she is to grant me one final service. The gift of mercy.
He pushes a knife into her hands, the same skinning knife he offered her when he made her his ward.
You recall how to do this?
She nods.
Good. You are what I made you. I am proud.
He winces as Arya drives the knife in, and Roose slumps onto the ground. By the time their small band returns to Hardhome, where Stannis and the others are waiting, they bear 2 bodies of the men who stopped this war. Stannis honors their sacrifice, and as Hardhome is burned to the ground as a tribute to the Lord of Light, their bodies are left amidst the fires to join R'hllor. That's our theory. Westeros is a land filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey across the 7 kingdoms and beyond, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.